Alrighty, let's get started with your lower body warm up. First thing we're going to do is open the gate, bring one knee up and externally rotate. We're going to do this 5 times on each leg. And so when you're doing this, 2, 3, you just want to make sure you're keeping your torso nice and still and have all that motion coming from your hip. Other side, bringing the knee up and externally rotating. If you feel any sort of stiffness, any sort of soreness, that's a good indicator that you've got a tight hip or tight hip flexors right now, and we're really going to need to stretch those. All right, from here, we're going to do some scoops. So you're going to stick one heel out, and then you're going to bend over and swoop your hands. We're going to do 5 on each side, but we're going to alternate legs, stepping the other side out, swooping down. And when you do this, you should feel a stretch throughout the whole leg. It becomes more intense the further you get down in that stretch. And so that is 2, 3, and 4, and 5. All right, we're going to take a really wide stance. So having the feet really wide, toes pointing in front. We're going to take our hands, I like to just kind of hold mine right in front of my chest, bending one knee, keeping the other one straight. We're going to lunge down to the side, and my torso is shifting, kind of facing forward a little bit. Should feel a stretch throughout this inner thigh. Standing back up, stretching to the other side, feeling a stretch now throughout this inner thigh. We're going to do this 5 times on each side. So this is 2, 2, and with each stretch, try to get a little bit lower into it and feel a little bit of a greater stretch here. And we're just holding it for 1 second at the bottom before we come back up. This is 4, 4, and 5, and 5. All right. Coming back into a neutral position, we're going to take our feet a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. Toes slightly pointed out to the corners of the room. We're going to sit down into a squat. So sending the hips back and bending the knees, sitting down into a squat. From here, I'm going to take my elbow and I'm going to try to connect it with the inside of my knee. And if I can, squat down just a little bit deeper. You should feel a whole lot of stretch in the inner thighs and the hips. And then just stand right back up. That's called a squat pry because you're prying your knees out with your elbows. We're just going to do this 3 times, holding for 5 to 10 seconds at the bottom, going down into that same position, holding, prying. It should feel a little bit uncomfortable, but not painful. And then come back up. And I want to note that it's okay if your squat depth doesn't look like that. It's okay if your squat depth is more like this. Just kind of pressing your knees out, trying to get as low as possible. If getting low is difficult, it's likely because you just need to widen your feet. And so if you look at your shoulders and draw a line from your shoulders down through the ground, your feet should be wider than that. So doing just one more pry, sitting down and kind of trying to pry the knees out, and then standing back up. All right, from here, coming to the ground for a few hip flexor stretches. First one we're going to do is just lie on your back. You're going to have your legs outstretched and then your head just comfortably on the ground. Bring one knee up and you're just going to pull that knee into your body, keeping the other leg outstretched. Bring that knee down. We're going to do this 3 times on each side, pulling that knee into the body for just about 5 seconds, and then bring that knee down, pulling the knee into the body, and then bringing it down, and then alternating, same thing, 3 of these stretches on either side, 2, and 3. Alrighty, coming into a kneeling stance now. What you're going to do is we're going to do a half kneel. So one leg is just going to stay in this kneeling position. We're actually going to step the other leg up, and I'll turn sideways so you can see what I'm doing. In this half kneeling position, we're going to stretch the hip flexor of the leg that is kneeling. So we're in this position. We're just going to, I like to put my hands on my hips, tuck my pelvis under, engaging my low belly. I'm just going to lean forward. Sometimes I like to extend this foot out a little bit and just leaning forward. If you don't have a mat, it can be really painful to have your knee on the hard ground, so it can be helpful to put a little mat under your knee, but we're just stretching forward, trying to push through this hip. You should feel a stretch throughout this hip flexor. Really pushing, and then like I said, if you're having pain in that knee, it's a good idea to put a mat under it because that can help you feel the stretch a little bit more, holding that for about 15 seconds, and then coming back up, and we'll hold it for another 15 seconds. I'll count this time. We're going to go into our stretch holding for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Alrighty. We're going to switch to the other side. So it is the same thing. We're going to be in that half kneel. We're going to tuck the pelvis under, engage the low belly, lean forward, trying not to arch the back. And then I'll count for our 15 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Giving your hip flexor a little break. And then going back down into it one more time. I'll count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. All right. Okay, so from this half kneel position, we're going to go into an ankle mobility stretch. You can do this without a weight or you can add a weight. And the weight that I like to add is either a kettlebell or a dumbbell. So I'm going to grab a kettlebell. All right, so this is my kettlebell. Anything between 10 to 25 pounds is appropriate. And so what we're going to do is we'll start without it. You're going to place your weight. So you're driving down through this front heel, just kind of placing a hand on your knee and then trying to press your knee forward over your toes. The key is that you've got to keep this heel on the ground. So we're pressing forward. You should feel some sort of stretch throughout the back of this ankle. So we're pushing on this front knee, really fighting to keep that heel on the ground. And I don't want you to stabilize with the ground at all. I want you to stabilize by just really pressing down on that front knee. Hold that for about 10 seconds, and then we can either repeat without any weight, or you can add a weight. I'm going to take my kettlebell and just put it comfortably on sort of my quadricep, my thigh muscle, not really on the knee bone. And I'm just going to press my knee in a straight line over my foot, trying to just fight to keep that heel on the ground for about 10 seconds. And then we're going to switch to the other side. So I'll do one with and one without a weight. You can see it from a bit of a different angle here. So we're in a half kneel, just pressing that knee over the ankle, fighting to keep the heel on the ground for about 10 seconds. And then coming up, I'm going to add my kettlebell. You don't have to. We're going to add that kettlebell on the knee and just pressing. So we don't want the kettlebell to cause any pain when it's resting on your knee. If it is, it's probably not a good idea to use it, but it's just resting here and it's adding a little bit of force, kind of pushing the knee over. And this is just stretching out that calf muscle and also helping to strengthen and mobilize the ankle. So while we're in this position, we're going to take a hurdler stretch. So we're already partially in this position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take both of my hands to the ground right next to my foot, and then I'm going to move this back knee back a little bit. Now we're in a hurdler stretch, and so I'm just trying to drive forward sort of through the front of the room, leaning forward a little bit. I should feel that stretch all throughout my inner thigh and my hip. Just holding this stretch here for a few seconds, maybe shifting from one side to the other, looking over my shoulders, just trying to get some sort of motion here in the hip. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hand that is furthest from this foot. I'm going to connect my shoulder and my knee, and I'm going to open up this stretch. So trying to open my chest to the room in front, trying to bring my hand to the ceiling, holding that for just a second. I'm going to do this 3 times, 2 and 3. And every time you open this stretch, you should feel a little bit more of a stretch in your hip. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to shift back. We're going to come into a tabletop position, and we're going to bring the other foot up to our hands. Same thing here. I'm just going to stay in this hurdler stretch for a few moments, feeling that stretch all throughout my hip region and the inner thighs. And I'm going to maybe look over either shoulder, just trying to get, again, a little bit more of a stretch here. And I'm going to take the hand that is furthest from this foot. I'm going to connect my knee and my shoulder, and I'm going to open up this stretch 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. Coming back down into a tabletop position. All right, and for this last stretch, we're going to stretch the calves. So you're going to need a wall. What you're going to do is take the ball of your foot and press it up against the wall, and then drive your hip into the wall. So that's going to look like this. I'm taking my foot and I'm pressing it into the wall, and then I'm driving my hip towards the wall. And when doing that, you should feel a stretch all throughout your calf. So I'm just taking my foot, pressing it up against the wall, and then driving my hip towards the wall, and that looks like this. And that is all the stretches for your upper. And that is your lower body warm-up. I hope you have a great lift.